how much trouble would you want there not to be? It's a weird question, right? Because you want to have something to contend with. You want to have something that forces from you the best that you have. And so you have to have real problems. It's something like that. Would you dispense with all your real... You could just lay down on a bed and have pablum infused into your mouth, you know, if all your problems were solved. And so maybe you want difficult problems that you can solve, something like that, because there's some... I don't know what it is about it. There's the overcoming and the growth that comes along with that. There's something about the nobility of the enterprise. You certainly see that when you go about having children, for example, which is, you know, the psychological literature is quite clear. If you do moment-to-moment comparisons of people who have kids and people who don't have kids, the people who don't have kids are happier. And so psychologists who tend to get things wrong even when they make intelligent discoveries like that one, immediately, some of them, jump to the conclusion that because happiness is the goal, that, well, there's something about children that, you know, make you unhappy, and that's not good. It's like, well, wait a second, maybe that's the wrong metric. It's like, of course you're less happy once you have children because you have to worry about them. You know, my neighbor down the street, who's a very smart woman, said to me once, you can only be as happy as your unhappiest child. And which I thought was really good, you know, that's really smart. But then it isn't, well, if having children doesn't make you happy, the answer isn't don't have children. It's like, don't be so stupid about being happy. That's the answer. It's because there's a nobility in the pursuit, right? And of course, now you're responsible. You know, you have a new baby, you think, especially if you're a new parent, you think, oh, what the hell is this? And what am I going to do with it? You know, it's like, and then you're done for the rest of your life. You never sleep properly again because you're going to be worried about this creature that you have to take care of. But like, what the hell good are you if you're not doing that, or something else equally difficult? Because you just haven't been called out yet, unless you take on a responsibility like that. The idea that life is, you know, that happiness is the purpose of life. It's like, great for happiness, man. If it comes along, you should be thrilled that it's visiting you. But the notion that that's what you should pursue, that's the weakest possible notion. First of all, as soon as something terrible happens to you, you're done. It's like, life is to be happy. It's like, well, now you have cancer. So how's that? How's the happiness thing working out for you now? Or maybe it's not you, you know, maybe it's your father that has Alzheimer's disease or some damn thing. And, you know, it's like, it's a rare person that doesn't have some catastrophe one person away from them. It's like, life is to be happy. That's not right. And the rule is aim high and get your bloody act together. That's the rule. And establish this contractual covenant with the ultimate ideal. And that will see you through the catastrophes. And that's a much more mature way of looking at life as far as I'm concerned, because all you have to do is have your eyes half open and you see that the fundamental reality of life is tragedy and suffering. That's inescapable. That doesn't mean that it makes life unbearable or that it makes being something that shouldn't have existed, right? That isn't what it means, but it means that you have to contend with it and you have to get ready, and the willingness to adopt responsibility for yourself and for others is the precondition for that. And then maybe if you do that properly, then now and then you get some happiness. You know, you can sit at the end of a day and you have half an hour where your conscience is clear and there's nothing that you need to be doing, and you can relax and think, you know, that's all right, things are okay, and thank God for that. And that's maybe where you get your happiness. So, yeah, that's something. That's growing up, man, obviously. And to not know that, and to not be taught that. Like, everyone should be taught that. It's so obvious. We should be taught that. And I think, what does it mean? You know, I'll talk personally for a moment, I guess. So I've asked myself a lot of questions in the last 8 months, man. I can tell you that. And I'm still asking myself a lot of questions. And I've been conferring with a lot of people, because I had lots of people who were helping me negotiate whatever the hell this is that's happening. And, you know, I could ask them how I was doing, and they would tell me a bunch of things I was doing wrong and some things I was doing right, and I could listen to them. And I was asking questions all the time about how the hell I should manage this properly. And, you know, what I was trying to do, and what seemed to serve me properly, was to figure out how to do it correctly. That was the issue. It's like, I didn't really care what happened, and I guess I really don't care what happens, but I do care if I do it correctly, because I don't want to screw it up. I don't want to screw things up. And that seems to be a reasonable goal for people. I mean, wouldn't you like that as a goal, that you don't screw things up? because you can't control your life isn't fully under your control by any stretch of the imagination, but it might be nice to not have your conscience eating at you saying, look, you had a big opportunity there and you mucked it up because you're weak and blind and you didn't listen. That's no good. The catastrophe is bad enough, as I said, without you being the bloody source of it. And maybe humility is one of the things that can prevent that, because you can look and you can think, okay, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? What can I do better? How can I do this properly? And then maybe, you get the intimation of the proper way to move forward. And maybe that's what protects you when things are chaotic and in strife. And who knows what that's worth? Like, one of the things that I've thought about deeply, I thought deeply about death and the death of my family members and about funerals. And I thought about it partly because I had this weird experience once that I think I told you about, where I took one of my clients to see an embalming, which was a very strange experience. And I had a chance to talk to the funeral directors, because they have weird jobs, And there's this idea, well, the Freudian idea that people suffer from this terrible death anxiety. And there's a whole line of social psychological theorizing called terror management theory that's predicated on the idea that we defend ourselves against death anxiety with our belief systems. And it's Ernest Becker's idea. He wrote The Denial of Death, which is a great book. But there's a weakness in it, because you see some people who aren't like that. Like emergency room nurses aren't like that. And palliative care nurses aren't like that. My sister-in-law is a palliative care nurse. That's a hard job, right? Because you go in there, you're caring for people, and they're in pain, and they're on their last legs, you're trying to make them comfortable, and you have a relationship with them, because how the hell are you going to make them comfortable if you don't? And then they go and die on you, and that just happens. That's what happens every day, right? And what's weird is that people can be palliative care nurses. It's like, how do you figure that out? Because people can actually thrive in the face of death, strangely enough. And like these funeral parlor directors, they were interesting to talk to, because that's all they do, right? They just deal with death and grief all the time. And it was very interesting talking to them, because I talked to two of them. They found their job extremely meaningful. And I asked them, well, what does that do to your life? You're saturated with death and suffering. And this is the same answer that I got from the palliative care nurses, that it doesn't undermine your life, it enriches it. Now, who would guess that, right? I mean, what the hell? That just doesn't make any sense at all. But what it does is speak to human possibility, because God only knows how tough you are. If you read history and you read about what people have done, you think, wow, we're pretty tough. I read there was a shipwreck in the Antarctica 100 years ago or so, and I read the story. It was an autobiography, if I remember correctly, of the captain. I might be wrong about that, but I've got the basic story right. Well, they had a shipwreck in the Antarctica. And then they were there for a whole year in the Antarctica, and none of them died. Not one. He didn't lose a single man. Not one. He kept their morale high. And then they took this boat that was on the ship, and they crossed like 400 miles of the roughest ocean, the roughest frigid ocean in the world, right? You don't go in that ocean. And then they went to an island, and they walked across the island, across these mountains that no one else has ever climbed since. And they went to the city on the other side of the island, and they got a boat, and they went and rescued their compatriots, and everyone survived. It's like Endurance is the name of the book. You read that book, man, you think, wow, people are really tough, and it's ridiculous. So who knows how tough you are? And maybe you find out by going out to find out how tough you are, right? So you take on a challenge, one that you think you can master, that's just a bit beyond your grasp. And you master it, and then you're a little tougher, and you think, hey, that worked out pretty well. And so then you're more of a monster. And then you go out and you find another challenge that's even bigger, and you think, well, maybe I can do that too. And then all of a sudden you can, and you get a little bit bigger, and God only knows what the limit is of you. See, we're very pessimistic, us modern people. We're pessimistic about humanity, that's for sure. Dismal, wretched, planet-destroying, cancer on the planet, right? As the Club of Rome described us so pleasantly back in the 1960s, And I don't know, maybe we're ashamed of the Cold War. Maybe we're ashamed of all the destruction in the 20th century and the hydrogen bomb and the continuing catastrophes of our societies. And we're deeply ashamed of that and ashamed of ourselves personally. But it's a hell of a thing to, call us a cancer on the planet. There's just no excuse for that. because what you do with cancer is eradicate it. And I don't think that that's a very noble motive, personally. And I think it says a lot about the people who would use such phraseology, that they would dare to conceptualize humanity in that manner. But you know, it would be nice if we could be optimistic. And I think, again, the problem with being optimistic is that it's naive. So then the question is there an optimism that's not naive? And I think there is. And the optimism that's not naive is in just a visualization of how strong people can be. So one of the things that I tell people, I've told my students in my class, in Maps of Meaning, here's a goal. You want to be the person at the funeral of your father that everyone can rely on. How would that be? You want to be the person who's broken and useless and adding to the misery in the corner. And look, I'm not making light of people's grief. You know, I understand grief. But who do you want to be when there's a crisis? Right? Do you want to be the person that everyone can turn to for strength? It's like, why the hell not? Why not that as a goal? That'd be a good goal, because then if there's a crisis, and there will be, it won't be such a bloody crisis, because there'll be someone there that can deal with it. You know, so when I went and talked to these people at the funeral home, I envisioned that. I thought, okay, well, this is something you have to contend with if you're going to be alive and adult. You have to contend with death and suffering, and you have to be ready for it. And you have to be there for the person, because that's all they're going to have. And so there's a goal, man. And in this time of nihilism, you know, it's what's the point of life? People ask, and they're taught that at universities. What's the point of life? Everything's interpretation. Humanity's a cancer on the planet. You know? Well, how about no? How about not that? How about that there's something to us?